Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here, site super moderator for Avatar The Lost Airbender Online.com and main host of the Avatar Online podcast. I'm here today with my next Korra episode review. This one's going to be for K209 The Guide, obviously the 9th episode of Book 2 Spirits, which aired last night. So general thoughts on the episode are pretty good. I thought it was a really good episode on the whole. A step down from beginnings, but I think any episode would have been, just because of how good and kind of special those episodes were. And especially, obviously, going back to Studio Pierrot for their last episode, was a step down in the animation as well. But what this episode did really well, I think, was that it focused on the characters. Yes, it advanced the plot forward in a pretty big way in terms of, at last, we kind of know what the stakes are, know what the kind of big plot, the villain plot is of this series, and what Korra is going to do to try and stop that. We at last have that after a while of not really knowing what was going on. And again, as I come back to it, the characters were great in this episode. Yeah, what Unalaq, Desna, and Eska went through in the kind of world between worlds, spirit world, was good, and especially what happened at the Eastern Air Temple. The interaction between Korra, Tenzin, Jinora, Kaya, Bumi, and all those was fantastic in that side of the story, and really made me kind of realize that how much I missed those characters interacting together, and it made for a nice reunion after so long. Kind of Korra leaving, obviously, in episode 2, and now at last the reunion. It was really well done. So yeah, getting to some specifics, I'll cover the other parts of the story before the Air Temple stuff. Start with Unalaq. Really interesting stuff here in that, now that they have the harmonic convergence explanation out of the way, they've introduced Vaatu through the beginnings episodes, they can finally get down to what his plan actually is, and that is to release Vaatu at harmonic convergence, or before then. And here we see him really inform Eska and Desna about his plan. We don't specifically see those two meet Vaatu, but I would assume they would have had to have seen him walking by to get to the northern portal. So I assume they know what the stakes are with what's going on, and they still decide to help him, and they come to the portal and they try to break through it with waterbending, and Desna gets injured by the kind of energy kickback, and Eska is the one who really wants to help her brother, but Unalaq is not. He says that the mission is more important than their safety, and definitely something to put in play that he's kind of got obsessed with this mission and almost presenting them turning on him at some point, which I think would be really interesting, in that those two as twins have this incredible bond, and that as much as maybe they have different views on things, they'll always kind of protect each other, and in this case it's their father putting them both at risk. And it was just really interesting to see Eska, especially, who's been kind of quite, I suppose, cruel in some points in the way she's kind of handled Bolin, really care for her brother and want to bring him to a healer and stuff like this, and go against her father. She's been the one to always kind of do everything her father said, and now she's not, to save Desna, so I like that. And definitely setting up some form of a kind of good turn at some point, which would be interesting. And then, of course, he can't open the portal, and we see how angry he's getting because of this, and they all think that Korra is dead, obviously, because of the report from Eska Desna. And he has to say this to Vaatu, who, again, we meet in the present day for the first time, which was nice to see. And Vaatu reveals that despite the connection between him and Robin being severed, he can still sense her presence, and that he knows Korra's in the spirit world, and that she's coming to him. So definitely the setup that there's going to be some big spirit world stuff, and as far as we know, he's in the spirit world in a way where he can bend, and Korra and Jinora can't bend in the spirit world, so I assume the way Korra's going to have to combat Unalaq will probably be getting the spirits on her side, the light spirits on her side, something like that. But either way, it's interesting to at last get what Unalaq's plan is, that being to release Vaatu, and that's nice. So, not really sure what else, what exactly they're going to have to explain, I suppose, how they met, because I would assume they would have had to have met before the portal was opened, or he had to have known about Vachu before the portal was opened. So there's still a lot to come, I think, in terms of how he knew opening the spirit world would get him there and stuff like that. There's, I think, a Noonlock flashback at some point is coming. Um, but yeah, the other side of the story that wasn't the Air Temple stuff was Korra, Mako, no, not Mako, Bolin, Asami, and Varric's side of the story, really. Mako's still trying to prove that Varric is behind what happened to Asami's company, and yeah, we see basically the main gist of what happens is that Varric, I assume, frames Mako for it, basically the sting operation going wrong, that it was actually Mako's plan all along for the sting operation to distract Asami, and he was behind the whole theft of all her stuff. That was the main thing that happened. But you also got a confrontation between Mako and Varric, which was interesting from the point of view of the fact that they both, I think, knew that the other knew about like what they knew. Basically, I think Varric knew that Mako knows what he did, and I think Mako knows that too. But neither of them were kind of just going to outright say it to each other. So there's still this kind of thing of like they were a little bit got a little bit confused in the conversation. They were like, "What are we talking about here? Like, do we don't know what's going on here?" But definitely a kind of veiled threat there from Varric that, you know, unless you stop, something bad will happen to Bolin and Asami. And then, of course, you have kind of Mako in the position that Korra was in the Aftermath, episode 7 of book 1, of her knowing in her heart that what she knows is right, but no one else really believing her. In that case, it was Mako against her, and in this case, it's basically everyone against Mako. So it made sense in terms of continuity that they kept it up, that no one actually believed Mako, because I think a sudden turn right here would have been really a quick resolution. So I like that. I actually like the idea of them kind of Mako being framed, because what this is going to do is probably put Asami and Bolin into the kind of spotlight in terms of having to help their brother, because as much as they kind of presented evidence that Mako could be behind it, I don't think either of them really believed that Mako would do that. So definitely, I think one of the key moments in Bolin's development will probably be him having to turn on Varric and save his brother, and kind of prove that way that you know, as much as Varric has done so much for him, he has to do this on his own. And then of course Asami has to step up as well and probably get her company back. So I think there's some really interesting stuff coming there. The only part of this episode I really didn't like was kind of them setting up that Mako and Asami are kind of back together again. It seemed like romance for the sake of romance, especially after last episode really hinted towards them not getting back together. So it was a shock to see them kind of kissing in this episode. It was just weird. I'm not too angry about it, but it's something like it's kind of unnecessary. Romance for the sake of romance, but you know, there's still a lot to come. And at the end of the day, it was only like a couple of seconds of the episode. The main focus is definitely that Mako has been framed for a crime he didn't commit, and no one's believing his evidence about Varric. So I do like what they're doing with this side of the story as well. And finally, we get to the Air Temple stuff. I just love the character focus throughout this whole part of the episode. Kaya and Janora, the stuff that we heard about their kind of connection in the bios before the book even started. So it was great to finally see that it wasn't like Korra or Tenzin who noticed that Janora had some form of spiritual connection. It was Kaya, and she was the one who was the adult supporting Janora when her case needed to be kind of presented. And then, you know, you had basically Tenzin and Korra's relationship as well done really well, that reunion. That the apology didn't come towards the end, but you knew that because of the stakes at hand that they were going to work together well. And I think because of the journey that they've all went on up to this point, they've realised what was wrong with their relationship before and could work better here. Korra was more patient, Tenzin was more patient, and they were both kind of less willing to get angry at each other and kind of talk more. Especially Korra, I think, has really developed a lot, as shown when she actually does that spirit bending technique properly for the first time, and gets rid of those dark bat spirits to kind of cleanse the kind of ancient air nomad spiritual grounds with Tenzin. So I like that. It shows that not just she learned a lot from the journey with finding out about Wan, but that like she's getting a better spiritual connection because of it as well. That it's helped that power kind of come to fruition as well. So I like that. And what else is there here? And then of course Tenzin, with the kind of sad kind of part of the episode in that he believed that it's been his destiny his whole life to be the guide, to guide the next avatar into the spirit world, and so he's devoted his whole life to that. And then he's forced to admit that he's never actually been to the spirit world, and it's been like his biggest failure, even though it's been his life's work. And then not only that, but to find out that his daughter has been able to see spirits her whole life and has this huge spiritual connection. There was definitely this kind of sense of like he had to, in this episode, realize that it wasn't his destiny, and Kai was definitely one to help Jinora kind of present that case to her father, and you just really felt for Tenzin that he helps a lot in this episode with the whole spiritual cleansing thing, and just being a kind of mentor figure to Korra, but he really had to kind of put a lot of faith in Jinora at the end of this episode, get past the whole protective father thing and realize that this is her destiny. Like, as far as we know, the only other person to be able to just see spirits is Iroh, and then to see that Korra can, Jinora can do that as well, you definitely get the sense of this was her destiny. This is what she was kind of born to do, to be the spirit guide for the Avatar. And as well as that, you got to see some of those dragonfly bunny spirits, which was nice. And Boomy had a relationship with one. Jinora obviously likes this furry foot one, who's obviously going to be the one she flies on into Wan Shi Tong's library, I think, who we see in the trailer. But either way, I think this is a really nice character dynamic that they have here between Korra and Jinora, just because as much as she's interacted with all the kids, there's never been like a really kind of like one-on-one conversation between the two too much. So it'll be really interesting to see how their kind of interactions go over the course of this episode, the next few episodes, I mean. But yeah, overall, this was a really good episode. It moved the plot along in terms both sides of the story, as I said. We now know what Unalaq's plan is, we now know what Korra's plan is, and as well as that we have the Mako kind of Varric plot still going on. It's just, it was definitely a setup episode, this one. Like, there wasn't anything like incredibly plot focused in this episode, but the character development was much needed and really well done overall. So I'm really happy about the episode. It's not one of the best of the season, but it is good still. It's better than a lot of stuff out there on TV right now. But yep, podcast for this episode later on today, and then podcast about The Search Part 3 will be tomorrow. So thanks for watching this review, and bye.